Energy with naturopath and medical intuitive Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theories that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swing of a pendulum to the waves in the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. In the same way, things such as rocks and minerals vibrate very slowly and at speeds that are imperceptible to us. Living things such as plants, animals, and man vibrate faster and appear to be alive. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is if we take everything in our own universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita as she explores questions such as, what are we made of? Why do we get sick? How can I live a more balanced and whole life? Call in and talk to her and her thought-provoking guests. Send us your questions and get the help you need to move beyond any obstacle or challenges that may be affecting your life, right from the source. So stay tuned and explore your possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm Dr. Rita Louise. Thank you all for tuning into the show today. Just Energy Radio is brought to you by SoulHealer.com and the Institute of Applied Energetics, AppliedEnergeticsInstitute.com. And to keep informed of the upcoming show schedule, visit www.justenergyradio.com and sign up for our newsletter. So I am happy to say that today, the first Friday in January, marks the beginning of our 5th year of broadcast. So that's 5 years of Just Energy Radio and 4 years worth of archives that you can go check out at that Just Energy Radio website. So if you're new to the show or haven't been to that webpage, 4 years of archives, ongoing, continual, great guests, great interviews, lots of information. Check it out. Today, we have one of my favorite people to have on because we always have these very deep conversations. And today we're going to be speaking with Michael Cremo about Hindu cosmology and human evolution. So let me tell you about Michael, and let's get him on the air. Michael Cremo is on the cutting edge of science and culture issues. In the course of a few months' time, he might be found on a pilgrimage to sacred sites in India, appearing on a national television show, lecturing at a mainstream science gathering, or speaking to an alternative science gathering. As he crosses disciplinary and cultural boundaries, he presents to his various audiences a compelling case for negotiating a new consensus on the nature of reality. Now, his webpage is mcremo.com, and he also, which we'll talk about a little later in the show, has a brand new book out called The Forbidden Archaeologist. Hey, Michael, thanks for coming on the show again. How are you?
Hi, Dr. Rita. Nice being with you and all your listeners.
I'll tell you congratulations on your multiple appearances on the Ancient Alien Show. And I have to tell you, and this is like a secret living room thing that we have, every time you come up on the screen, I point at the TV and go, I know that guy. And then we laugh.
Well,
so you're famous
it has
in my
been fun
living
being
room.
on that series. It has been fun being on that series, yes.
And I wanted to start there because, I've read your books, and I don't have the books in front of my hand, but your Human De-Evolution book and your Forbidden Archaeology book. And in my mind, it seems like there's, I don't want to say conflict with some of the things that they're proposing in that series.
Yeah, that's right.
And so now that I have you on the air, I'd like to get your opinion on that whole thing. And let me just kind of set this up. Because according to the series, we as mankind were created by a race of aliens. And in your work, you talk about evidence of fully formed modern humans living on Earth like 3 million years ago. What's the connection? Was this race of beings the gods that created us?
Well, people, they tend to want very simple answers to the question, where did we come from, as human beings? What is our ultimate origin? And either people want a very simple creation account. God created the first man and woman, and that was it. Or they want a very simple scientific evolution story. You know, the chemicals combined in the Earth's early ocean, and they formed the first single-cell creature, and then gradually that single-cell creature started developing into multi-cell creatures, different animals. They went onto the land. Some of them became monkeys. Some of them became ape men. Some of them became human beings. So some people want a very simple evolutionary account like that. And then some people want a very simple extraterrestrial account that, well, yes, some extraterrestrials, flesh and blood extraterrestrials, came to Earth and saw some ape men and manipulated their DNA and turned them into human beings like us. So people tend to want very simple stories, and they think all three of these things are mutually exclusive. You know, either it is creation, or it is scientific evolution, or it is extraterrestrial intervention. But I think the actual story may be a little more complex. What I would say is, well, yes, there is some supreme cosmic intelligence, you could call it God if you want, that's behind the whole thing. So there is a kind of an element of intelligent design or creation in there. But I think there's also a kind of evolution that goes on, but not the kind that today's materialistic scientists talk about. It's rather an evolution of consciousness. It's something that I talk about in my book, Human Devolution, where I propose we don't evolve up from matter, as most scientists now believe, but we devolve, or we come down from some higher level of pure consciousness, or Brahman, as it's called in the ancient Sanskrit writings of India. And it's also, I think there's also an extraterrestrial element involved in all of this, because I don't think we're alone in the cosmos. The whole cosmos is populated. We're part of a whole cosmic hierarchy of beings. And some of these cosmic beings, you could call them extraterrestrials if you like, because they're not from this earth, or you could call them gods. That's also a valid terminology for me. They have something to do with the origin of our bodies, because as far as I'm concerned, any body is a vehicle for a conscious self. That's what a body is. It's a vehicle for a conscious self, and the conscious self can exist apart from the body. It can exist apart from matter. It originally exists on what I call a level of pure consciousness. But if it departs from that level, and the reason it would depart is it becomes selfish, because on the level of pure consciousness, the ruling principle is love, which means giving, being unselfish. So if a conscious self becomes selfish or egotistical, it can no longer exist in that harmony, and there must be some other place for it. And this material world is that other place, and here it gets a vehicle in which it can act out its selfish desires, and those vehicles are what we call bodies. And where do they come from? Well, they're designed and built by higher beings in the cosmos. You could call them extraterrestrials. Now, in that documentary series, the Ancient Aliens series, one idea that's presented is that there aren't any real gods or higher beings. They're just flesh and blood extraterrestrials like us who just simply have to have a higher technology. And my perspective is, and according to that perspective, all accounts that we find in different wisdom traditions about gods and angels and higher beings like that are just mistakes that ancient people made. They were visited by so-called flesh and blood extraterrestrials. who had a more advanced technology, and the people on Earth mistook them for gods or something. So to me, the two things aren't exclusive. I think, yeah, there were ancient astronauts. There are also gods and angels and astral beings. It's the two things aren't mutually exclusive for me as far as I'm concerned. I don't know if I'm answering your question or not, Dr. Rita.
No, you are. No.
Okay.
No, and in my studies, it seems like many of the ancient cultures had a understanding of, I'm going to call it, an omnipotent God. I mean, there was like God, the creator of man, and then there was this other God who was kind of the creator of reality, which I'm going to make the assumption would correspond to like the creative intelligence of the universe, even though we use the word God.
Yeah, according to the Vedic or Hindu cosmology, which I've become very much inspired by in my work and personal life, there is an ultimate source of all being. You can say God with a capital G, if you like to use that word. Of course, that's an English word, but it's not a Sanskrit word. But then there are also what are called demigods, which are beings that are kind of halfway between human beings and the ultimate God. In other words, they're material beings, but they have more control over the different forces and energies in the universe than an average human being would. An example sometimes that I give is like on an airplane. Everybody on an airplane is a human being, but one of the human beings a few of the human beings on the airplane are the pilot and co-pilot, and they have more responsibility for what's going on in terms of the airplane flying than the passengers sitting in the passenger department, although they're equally human beings. So I think in our cosmos, there's a similar situation. There's a lot of conscious beings who are human-like, but some of them have more power over the elements and energies and forces in the cosmos than an ordinary terrestrial human would have. And I would call those beings demigods, not God with a capital G, but demigods. So, and those beings are not worshipable. They're not ultimately spiritual. They're like us. They just have more power, and I think that's a reality that we need to confront. It's one reason why I like, although I might not agree with everything that all the ancient aliens theorists say, I do agree with them that there are beings, material beings in the cosmos who are more powerful than we are. And I think there's also a supreme God who's completely spiritual, and beyond all that, that's another thing I also accept. And so I agree with some things that some of the supporters of the ancient aliens theory say in that series that airs on the History Channel, but in other senses I might disagree with some of the things that they say, and whatever I said on that show, it has to be taken in the context of what I mean by these things.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there have been points in time watching those shows that we just sit and laugh at some of the commentary. I mean, all in all, I think the series is great, but then there are certain things that get said
it
that
does make people think.
Yes, But then there are certain things that get said that just make me go, I just crack up. It's like, I don't think that was true. You know, good guess, maybe. But anyway, so, for example, Brahma, I mean, because there's Vishnu, who is the ultimate God, or that's the name of what we in the Western world would call God, I'm assuming.
Yeah, with the
and
capital
then there's
V,
yeah, with a capital V. So would Brahma be considered a demigod? I mean, how far down the chain? Because, you know, in the Vedic tradition, there's a million people.
Right. Well, it is very complex. People tend to like simple ideas, but the Vedic ideas are quite complex. There is a supreme God, you could say. I prefer the term supreme conscious being, who's the source of all other conscious beings, because the Vedic universe is very much a consciousness-based universe. So there is a supreme God, you know, Vishnu or Krishna, but even that supreme God can expand himself into millions of avatars, different forms in which he can enter this world, and these forms are completely spiritual. That's the meaning of avatar, which, you know, some people are familiar with from the film that came out a couple years ago. But aside from this supreme conscious being and his avatars, there are the demigods who are responsible for running the material universe, and there are many of them. And the chief demigod is Brahma. He's like the creator God. The ultimate God is completely beyond matter. He's not very much concerned about the material universe and, you know, things like that. So to construct the material universe and the planets in it and the different sorts of bodies that are there for conscious selves who come down to this level of reality, there is a kind of cosmic engineering God, and his name is Brahma, and he would be a demigod, but the chief demigod. And then under him, there are many subordinate demigods that are responsible for the sun and the moon and the oceans and, you know, all the different natural phenomena. There's a demigod in charge of it. Kind of like in a city, you know, you'd have a mayor, but then there's a chief of police, a traffic department, a water and power department. You know, in any city, there's a lot of people who are responsible for keeping the machinery of the city going for the citizens. So in the Vedic universe, the demigods would be like that. They would be the intelligences that behind the scenes are making sure that the planetary systems are in order, the life support systems are in order, that various types of material bodies are available for conditioned souls or conscious selves to occupy. So Brahma, to again answer your question very briefly, would be in the demigod category, but the chief demigod.
And these demigods that you're talking about, I mean, I think a lot of people have the impression that when you're talking about God or gods, you know, the first image that comes into your mind is, you know, the little old guy with the white hair and beard, you know, sitting in the chair kind of directing things. But it sounds like what you're talking about, even in these demigods, is more about energies or vibration or level of consciousness as opposed to these people mixing things together and creating things in the physical world.
Yeah, their creative process is different than, say, an ordinary human creative process, because they're more, first of all, they have bodies made of more subtle energies than we do, and they're more in touch with the subtle energies in the universe, which are the energies that can be manifested in grosser forms, but they're not ultimately operating on that level. Like if we would want to build a car or something like that, well, we have to extract metals from the earth, we have to refine them, we have to make them into different parts and screw them together and weld them together and things. They don't deal with things on that level. They have a higher level of control, so that they can manifest things in a different way by what would seem to us to be mystic powers. But for them, they're perfectly natural ways of doing things. They're just more powerful. And it's a little difficult for us to comprehend, just like perhaps if you have some ants working in an anthill, and of course they're building their anthill, they have their own little society there, but the ants in an anthill would have very little understanding of how, say, human beings are, building airplanes and computers and manifesting our society. So the same way, just as, say, we as human beings are more intelligent, more powerful than ants in an anthill, there are beings in the cosmos who are similarly more powerful and more intelligent than we are. Maybe we don't like to admit it, but they're able to operate in a way that might seem very mysterious and magical to us, just like ants could hardly comprehend what human beings are doing.
I think people are starting to get a little taste of it, like more the general population are starting to get a little taste of that when you start bringing in concepts like the law of attraction and stuff like that, because it's operating at a more energetic level as opposed to a physical level, and people are actually seeing results in interacting with the world that way.
Yeah, if people thought about it, they realize that actually, even in our ordinary lives, we're operating on a vibrational level. In the Vedic cosmos, everything is done by vibration, and that is the meaning of mantras. Mantras are concentrated sound vibrations, and by vibrating certain sounds at certain frequencies and with a certain level of purity of consciousness, a lot can be accomplished. But even we operate pretty much on the basis of sound. Whenever we want to do something, first we make some sound about it, and then the sound is distributed in the form of orders or commands or agreements that cause people to do things. For example, if someone wants to build a house, the first thing is, well, there's some sound. Somebody says, I want to build a house, and that sound vibration influences the minds of others who go ahead and do it. And even the sound, that's inspired by an even more subtle vibration of consciousness. There's conscious intention. So if we really thought about it, we'd understand that just even in our ordinary dealings, a lot of what we're doing is the manipulation of thought and sound, which are very subtle energies, and by properly manipulating sound and thought, we're able to control the grosser material elements. If we thought about it very carefully, we'd see that's pretty much the case. But it's something that we do without thinking very much about it. But in the Vedic cosmology, this sort of thing was done consciously with great understanding of what the connections between the subtler and grosser energies are, really. So we tend not to understand those things so well, and therefore we create a lot of problems in our attempts to manipulate the grosser energies. We get lots of conflict, we get lots of environmental destruction, we get a lot of bad side effects because we really don't understand the proper relationships between the energy of consciousness, the energy of mind, the energy of the grosser elements. So I would
I
agree
think
with
manipulate
you.
is like a really appropriate word. Where in the Vedic tradition, there's more about surrendering to the energy and working with the energy,
that is absolutely right.
Versus consciously trying to manipulate it, which puts you out of the energy and out of control of it.
Yes, as I was saying, Dr. Rita, according to my understanding of the Vedic cosmology, which is very similar to other wisdom traditions, not that I think only in the Vedic cosmology is there any truth. If you look at any of the world's great spiritual cosmologies, they tend to have the same sorts of ideas. But I sort of chose the Vedic cosmology as something that works for me in a lot of ways. But according to that, we're all beings of pure consciousness, and there's a source of all conscious beings. And since we're all originally organically related, as all coming from the same source, conscious source, and we all exist in mutual harmony with the source of all energies and consciousness, everything works. That's why I was saying in the beginning, the only reason where there is a material world, a world of matter, is that some of the conscious selves become egotistical or selfish. And the ability to do that always has to be there. I mean, the ruling principle of that level of pure consciousness, where everything is in harmony, is love, which has to be freely given at every moment. And that freedom means and love means unselfishness. It means taking into account the desire of the other, not just your desires. So when a conscious self becomes egotistical and wants to put itself first in every circumstance, then it can no longer exist in that harmony. And there has to be another place where it can exist. So this material world that we live in is a kind of virtual reality system where conscious selves are allowed through the vehicles of material bodies to act out their selfish desires in competition with other conscious selves who are trying to do the same thing. And therefore, the basic mentality is one of exploitation, domination, control.
Let's come back to that because that's a really interesting topic, and I have a couple of questions. I'm Dr. Rita Louise. We're talking to Michael Cremo. His webpage is mcremo.com, and his new book is The Forbidden Archaeologist. And we'll be back after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.
Hi, I'm Dr. Rita Louise, the founder of the Institute of Applied Energetics. Start a new career today on the leading edge of alternative health and healing. The Institute of Applied Energetics can help you to develop the specialized skills you'll need to work as an energy medicine practitioner, intuitive counselor, or professional medical intuitive. Besides our outstanding technical instruction, our programs also support you in creating and building a successful business in this rapidly growing field. Be a catalyst for changing the way healthcare is done around the world. Contact the Institute of Applied Energetics right away or visit appliedenergeticsinstitute.com. Balance in all things is critical to maintaining health. In the hectic drive of today's world, many of us forget to take care of our most important asset, ourselves. At productsforthesoul.com, we want to support your effort to nurture yourself. We offer a wide variety of herbs, supplements, and high-quality, ready-to-eat, all-natural foods. We even offer holographic chip technology products that can augment the body's natural ability to increase energy, improve sleep, and mitigate pain. Best of all of our products are delivered straight to your door. It's time to start loving yourself. Visit productsforthesoul.com and let us help you along the way.
And now back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello, and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm Dr. Rita Louise, and we're talking with Michael Cremo about his book, The Forbidden Archaeologist. We're talking about all kinds of things, Hindu cosmology. And Michael, where we left off, we were talking about the de-evolution of man into a physical body. In many other traditions, or this is the line that I've heard over the years, that we've taken on physical bodies so that we can learn how to interact with the limitations of the 3D world. And it sounds like what you're saying is, and for bluntness sake, that we're stupid and greedy and egotistical, or we needed to experience that part of ourselves, and that's why we're stuck here. And now I feel really guilty.
Well, there are two types of people in the world, conscious selves in this world. There's one type who has an inkling that I'm not just meant to dominate, control, and exploit matter. That's not my main purpose. I'm a being of pure consciousness, and I'm ultimately from some other level of reality where I existed in harmony with all other conscious beings and with the source of all conscious beings. And such persons will try to realize that on this level of reality. They will treat everyone as another being of pure consciousness who may have forgotten that and may be acting in a strange way, but ultimately is related to me, just as I am related to everyone who is a being of, a conscious being, originally a being of pure consciousness, all from the same source. We're all related. No need to be fighting with each other, competing with each other for control of material resources. And I think if those who understand this were more numerous, even this material world would be a much better place. But unfortunately, there are those who are trying to get more and more deeply involved in the attempts to dominate, control, and exploit matter in competition with others for survival. And I think that's the root of our environmental crisis. It's the root of our financial crisis. There are those who are selfish, who are trying to exploit the systems that are there to a greater extent than they deserve. And it's also the root of a lot of the conflicts that we see going on in the world today, because there's conflict among individuals, among classes, among nations, even among religions. But this is a choice that each of us has to make, how we're going to identify ourselves. And I think the more that we identify ourselves as all related to each other, all beings of pure consciousness, all with some higher purpose in life than trying to dominate, control, and exploit matter. And by matter, I mean oil, natural gas, different resources, financial resources, bodies of others. If that exploitative, dominating, controlling mentality were given up in favor of this other mentality that I was talking about, even this world would be a much better place. It just depends upon our mentality.
In that movie, Avatar, which you brought up before, which we're going to go on in a little bit and talk about the different avatars of Vishnu, but I thought one of the most, prophetic isn't the right word. One of the lines in that movie was when the female character put her hand on the male character's chest and looked at him and said, "I see you." And I think that, we don't see each other in that higher consciousness, soul-to-soul way, or not all that often. And, my feeling is that if we could connect with each other on that level, that it would force us. It's not even force us. We would get knocked out of that material place automatically.
Yeah, and that's one reason why there are different systems of yoga and meditation that are there as part of the Vedic worldview. And one of them is called kirtan, which means joining together, vibrating, transcendental sound. And this is becoming popular in a lot of yoga studios. Yoga has become very popular all over the place. There are lots of yoga studios where initially they were just simply concentrating on the bodily positions. But then they also realized that transcendental sound vibration, the vibration of mantras together musically, is something that can elevate consciousness and bring those who are practicing yoga into that higher level of recognizing each other and all others as beings of pure consciousness ultimately, rather than looking simply at the material level where you perceive differences. Of course, differences are there. They have to be taken into account. But ultimately, we are related to each other on some higher level of pure consciousness. And when this is understood, then you get you develop, your relationships start to change for the better in terms of being able to relate to people more as beings of pure consciousness, rather than just as we're taught in our biology classrooms, machines made of matter in competition with each other for survival.
Well, let's go ahead and move on and start talking a little bit about the different incarnations of Vishnu, and I'm just going to kind of give that to you. I mean, I have some questions, but maybe you can set it up for the listeners and kind of give them some, background and information about it to start.
Well, the basic idea is that there is a supreme conscious being who's known as Vishnu or Krishna. They're different names, but that supreme conscious being exists on the highest level of spiritual reality beyond the material world. But when we leave that higher level of reality, which we've all done, in that sense we're all extraterrestrials. None of us are from this earth. We're all from that higher, ultimate level of reality, which I call the realm of pure consciousness, or you could call it the spiritual world. People might have different terminologies for it. I like the realm of pure consciousness. If we depart from that level and we come here to get away from that harmonious world and have the freedom to act selfishly. So when we do that, the Supreme Conscious Being will enter this level of reality to give teachings, to try to remind us of what our real home is, what our real place in the cosmos is, that we really don't belong on this level of reality where we undergo what's called samsara, the wheel of birth and death, where we, our material body, although the conscious self is eternal, it has no birth or death, the bodily vehicle that we occupy does have a birth and a death. And when one bodily vehicle is finished, we go into another bodily vehicle. That's called reincarnation. And that can go on and on and on and on. So from time to time, the Supreme Conscious Being will manifest in this level of reality to remind us about what our real home is, what our real purpose of life should be. And those manifestations are called avatars. Avatar means one who descends from a higher level to a lower level. And it's done out of a desire to reawaken the original consciousness of the conscious selves who are on this level of reality. So there are many avatars of Vishnu or Krishna that are described in the Vedic literature. Some of them, one of them is called Matsya, and another is called Nrsimha, and another. There's a lot of them.
So this is where I get confused, and so this is where I was kind of leading to. The first couple, the Matsya that you spoke about, or there's Cremo, the tortoise.
Yeah.
I have my little cheat sheet sitting in front of me, so I actually know their name and don't just go, that guy. Or Varna, the boar. So we have, so those are supposedly the first incarnations of Vishnu. So we have a fish and a tortoise and a boar. And so this is where I get confused, and I'm hoping you can clear this up with me and anybody that's interested in this. Maybe we'll get some insight. Why would Vishnu incarnate as these animals as opposed to incarnating in a human body like he does later on? I mean, on the earth, were we in a lower, and I hate to say this word to you, but in a lower state of evolution where a fish was the highest level of consciousness, or?
No, if you look at, there's a whole body of Vedic literature, the historical part of the Vedic literature, which is called the Puranas. So all these different manifestations take place at different points in time for different reasons. The boar incarnation that you mentioned, Varaha, that took place in the early history of the cosmos, because according to the Vedic cosmology, the cosmos goes in cycles. There are vast cycles of creation and destruction. There are huge inundations that take place during the destruction parts of the cycles, so that the earth is lost in the oceans of destruction. And when the earth is lost in the oceans of destructions, it has to ultimately be brought back up to the surface. It has to be restored to its proper state. And in the Vedic cosmology, the avatar of God that does that is called Varaha, the boar incarnation. Now, that is we have to have firmly in our minds that God can take on any form he wants. Say in the Bible, he takes the form of a burning bush. That doesn't mean he became a burning. I mean, he ultimately is a burning bush. It means he took on that form for a particular purpose. It's also said that God took the form of a whirlwind. So this is something that we have to keep in mind, that according to not just the Vedic traditions, but all of the major spiritual traditions, God has the ability to take on different forms for different purposes. It's not that God is limited to the form that he takes on for a particular purpose, but that's something he can do, like an actor can act out different roles in different films or different plays. So for the purpose of bringing the earth from the waters, the oceans of devastation, where it was drowned, back to the surface, according to the Vedic cosmology, early in the universal history, God manifested a form like that of a boar, because what a boar can do is like dive into a body of water, and with its tusk, it can dig into the mud at the bottom and pick up an object and bring it to the surface. That's one thing it can do. So there was a purpose like that for that particular manifestation or avatar of Vishnu, and it has to be seen in the context of this whole cosmic history, where at certain points there's a devastation, there's a vast cosmic inundation when the earth goes down under these waters of cosmic devastation, and ultimately has to be brought back to the surface. So there are stories like that behind all of the different avatars that you have in your list there.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense to me. Let me ask this question. I guess what you're saying is that this list, it's not necessarily chronological. Would that be a correct thing to say? Time-wise,
It may be like roughly, chronological, but say, for example, another thing that happens during these devastations. You mentioned the fish incarnation, Matsya. Of course, these aren't ordinary. Whether we're talking about the boar or the fish or the tortoise, they're not ordinary farmyard types of animals that we're talking about. We're talking about cosmic manifestations of vast size and potency and full of spiritual energies and manifesting, just brilliant colors and energies and illumination and things of that sort. We're not talking about, just the ordinary sorts of animals we would see in a zoo or something like that. So this and they appear repeatedly because there are cycles of creation and destruction that go on according to the Vedic cosmological calendar or the Mayan calendar or any number. So one thing that happens when these devastations come, and it's not going to be in 2012 according to the Vedic cosmology, but there is going to be
we're going to come back to that
later.
There is a
cosmic
That's a
devastation.
totally topic I
and
want to cover.
It does involve the inundation of the earth with cosmic waters of destruction. And when that happens, there has to be some way to, and this is sort of a common feature of many spiritual traditions. And this was mentioned in the most recent episode of the Ancient Aliens series, is that practically every wisdom tradition in the world has some kind of flood legend or story. And the Vedic cosmology also has this. I think the reason why all these different world cultures have these flood legends is that it's something that really does happen at some point in the vast cycles of time, universal time. So in the Vedic legend, there was a king. In the Bible, it's Noah, and in the Sumerian text, it's Utnapishtim. There's in the Vedic text, there's a king named Satyavrata. He's given warning that this cosmic ocean of devastation is going to inundate the earth. So, like Noah, he was instructed to build an ark and put the seeds of all different types of plants and animals in that ark, and then also the knowledge, human wisdom, the accumulated wisdom of humanity, the Vedic wisdom also, that was also to be saved. So then when this ocean of cosmic devastation came and devastated the earth, then not only was the boat there, because the boat could have gotten whipped around or sunk or something. So according to the Puranas, there was an avatar of Vishnu, Matsya, who took the form of a huge fish and protected and guided this boat. Just like sometimes we encounter legends like Jonah and the whale, for example. Jonah was thrown in the ocean and a whale, protected him. Or sometimes we even hear stories of how dolphins will protect people. There's lots of stories about how aquatic animals will protect and guide people, take them back to shore. So in this particular legend of Matsya, this historical account of Matsya that's there in the Puranas, the fish avatar, that's the reason it's there. That during the cosmic devastations, when the king is building this boat, to protect, the plants and the animals and the Vedic knowledge, this Matsya avatar, this fish avatar, guides that boat through the waters, and then eventually when the waters start to go down, it's led to a particular peak, of the Himalayan mountains, and from that point, the earth is repopulated. So this is something that recurs time and time again. So it's not necessarily that everything's just happening once in a linear fashion. These are recurring events in the vast cycles of time that the Vedic cosmology talks about. And there are very, very detailed accounts of these things that are given in the Puranas, the historical writings of the Vedic culture.
I know, and there are a ton of them. And they're all really long.
Yes, they are. They're great epics. There's fantastic amounts of knowledge in them. There's one Purana that's regarded as the essence of all of them. It's called the Bhagavat Purana, or the Srimad Bhagavatam. So if anybody wanted to delve into the Puranic literature, they could read that one Purana and get the essence of all of them. It's called the Bhagavat Purana, or another name for it is the Srimad Bhagavatam.
I want to ask about one more avatar, because we have about 4 minutes till we go to break, and that's Rama. And in the material that I've been reading, he was helped, or at least in the mythology, by a monkey or an ape man or something, Hanuman. And I just found that really curious that, okay, so we're humans and we're doing this human thing, but then he's helped by an ape man. And it just brought up all kinds of really interesting interpretations of what that could mean. And I'd like to hear, what that's supposed to be about.
Well, that's really fascinating. Generally, we think that the idea of ape man came from European scientists in the 19th century. They thought, okay, human beings must have evolved from apes, so they proposed there must have been some ape men, some missing links from which modern humans evolved. So that's what most people think is the origin of the idea of ape men. But the Puranas and the other historical writings of ancient India spoke of ape men thousands of years ago, way before European and Western scientists started speculating about their existence. So that's what I find is really pretty fascinating. So the Rama was an avatar of Vishnu or Krishna, and in the Puranas it said that he lived in the Treta Yuga, which would be at least 2 million years ago in terms of the Vedic time cycle, and perhaps as much as 20 million years ago. So it's pretty amazing, but if you read the accounts, you'll see that Rama was assisted by different human beings in his mission. And the mission of an avatar of Vishnu coming to this world is always to try to help those who are trying to understand what their real origin is, who are working for peace and harmony in the world, who are working for real, true spirituality, not sectarian religion, but real, true spirituality, and trying to keep down the influence of those who have this selfish, dominating, exploitative nature and who are causing trouble to the earth, trouble to the earth's residents. So that's the mission of an avatar. So Ram was an avatar, and he was fighting a great demon named Ravana, who was the personification of this selfish, egotistical, greedy mentality. And in his efforts, Ram was assisted by humans, but also by a race of beings called, in Sanskrit, Vanaras, and that means forest people. And they are described as having bodies like those of apes or monkeys, but human-like intelligence and the ability to speak as humans do. And they have a culture not as high as that of human beings, but higher than that of apes and monkeys. So this idea of intermediates between human beings and apes is something that wasn't invented by Charles Darwin and his modern followers. It was there long ago in the ancient Sanskrit writings of India. But the interesting thing is that it's not that the human beings evolved from the ape men, rather they simply coexisted with them. They were just different types of beings who coexisted with each other, not that one came from the other.
Okay, the music's there, which means we need to stop. I'd like to get your opinion, because we're talking about bodies, evidence from 3 million years ago, who they belong to or what that belongs to. I'm Dr. Rita Louise. We're talking to Michael Cremo. We'll be back with Michael after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.
Go deep inside yourself and venture into the realm of the unconscious mind with my Meditating on the Kabbalah guided imagery audio CDs. Discover who you are and what you want in life. Meditating on the Kabbalah can help you to open, clear, and revitalize the energetic pathways of your subtle being. They will support you in your spiritual quest by helping you to access the profound insights and inner guidance you need as you work in alignment with your highest good. Let them help you to release negative thoughts and emotions and clear away any limitations that may keep you from experiencing your full potential. Walk down the path to health, healing, understanding, and enlightenment with Meditating on the Kabbalah. Order your copy today at www.soulhealer.com. Treat yourself to some soulful nourishment and an expansion of your concept of who and what you are. Avoiding the Cosmic 2x4 brings the whole subject of energy medicine into vivid reality, where it provides you with fascinating insights and a deeper understanding of who you are as an energetic being. Avoiding the Cosmic 2x4 will provide you with a roadmap to understanding the influences subtle energy plays in our experience of physical, mental, and emotional health, and the manifestation of disease in the body. It will also help you to realign your body, mind, and spirit so that they function in harmony with one another, thus allowing you to experience inner peace, self-awareness, and centeredness. You can get your copy of Avoiding the Cosmic 2x4 at www.soulhealer.com. How would you like to live long and enjoy great health? How about creating solid bones and whiter teeth? Strengthen your heart and eyes and have radiant, youthful-looking skin. There is an ancient health and longevity secret that has been used for millennia in Egypt, India, and China that can help you achieve this. For the first time in the modern world, Pearlsium brings this ancient wellness secret to you. For more information about Pearlsium, visit www.productsforthesoul.com. Before we get back to the show, I would like to thank all of you for tuning into Just Energy Radio. Many of the people I've helped over the years were listeners just like you. If you're at a junction in your life, don't stand alone at this important time. Call me or send me an email. We can set up a private consultation so that you too can experience health, healing, and wholeness in your life. To find out more about the services I offer, visit www.soulhealer.com.
And now back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
Hello and welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm Dr. Rita Louise, and we're here speaking with Michael Cremo. His new book is The Forbidden Archaeologist, and actually it just came out. Michael, you were talking about the ape-men people living parallel to humans in the past. And so I know in your books you talk about fossil evidence of stone tools, of modern human footprints in stone, which I've actually personally seen one that was definitely a human footprint, which if it's in stone, it obviously has to be millions of years old for the dirt or mud or whatever to turn to stone. So do you think that these were modern humans that existed at an earlier period of time and then we just kind of annihilated ourselves like really, really, really back into the Stone Age? Or do you think these were like the extraterrestrials that were here 3 million years ago? Who do you think created these artifacts?
Well, in my books like Forbidden Archaeology and this most recent one, The Forbidden Archaeologist, I talk about archaeological evidence for extreme human antiquity. And by that I mean human bones, human footprints, and artifacts of the kind that could only be made by a human being that are found in layers of rock millions of years old. You know, in other words, they shouldn't be there according to the standard theories. According to the standard theories of human origins that are taught in schools and universities today, human beings like us first came into existence between 100 and 200,000 years ago. And before that, there shouldn't be any human beings like us present on Earth. But most of the ancient wisdom traditions, including the Vedic cosmology of India, tell us that humans like us have been present on Earth for millions and millions of years, going all the way back to the very beginnings of the history of life on Earth. So there is evidence for that. Scientists have found human footprints, human artifacts, human bones going back many millions of years. Of course, you won't see these things mentioned in the textbooks. That's why I call it forbidden archaeology, because there's a process of knowledge filtration that operates in the world of science. The evidence that goes along with the dominant theories will pass through this filter, and therefore you'll see it in the textbooks. But evidence that radically contradicts the accepted theories gets filtered out, and therefore you don't see it in the textbooks. But it is there, and I've kind of collected all that evidence and put it out in my books like Forbidden Archaeology and The Forbidden Archaeologist. So this evidence, I believe, is evidence showing that humans like us have always existed on Earth. Of course, there have been vast cycles of time that take place. There have been repeated catastrophes in the history of life on Earth. So, yes, there can be times when human civilizations are flourishing, and there can be times when human civilizations are at a very low level. But the main thing for me is that human beings at this level of culture or some other level of culture have always been present on Earth. And not just on Earth. According to the ancient Vedic cosmology, there are about 400,000 human species scattered throughout the whole cosmos. So we're not the only human-like creatures in the cosmos. And according to the ancient Sanskrit writings, if we look at the histories, there have been visitations. Human-like beings have come and visited the Earth. Now, these extraterrestrial beings, according to the Vedic cosmology, are not always flesh and blood humans like us. They are often higher levels of beings who would be called demigods, or maybe to use Christian terminology, angels. In other words, higher, more subtle beings, or not simply extraterrestrials, but what we might call extra-dimensional beings. And yes, our human population on Earth has always been in contact with these extraterrestrial and extra-dimensional beings. So actually, some, according to the Vedic history, some human beings on Earth are hybrids. For example, there's a Sanskrit epic called the Mahabharata. It's a epic, sort of like the Indian version of Homer's The Odyssey or something like that. It's a
way
great
more
Sanskrit.
epic than that.
Yes.
It's 9 books
but
long for those that are listening. 9 books. Go ahead.
Just to put it in context. But in some of the main characters in this epic called the Mahabharata, like the 5 Pandava brothers, they have a terrestrial mother and celestial or extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional fathers, not of this earth. For example, Arjuna, his mother was a queen on earth, but his father was a demigod. And actually there are also accounts like that from different cultures. According to traditional Japanese culture, their royal family, their imperial family is descended from a sun goddess. And there are accounts like that from many, different cultures, the Greek and Roman cultures. Some of the heroes of the Greeks and the Romans, they also were hybrid in this sense that they had either a celestial father and a terrestrial mother or vice versa. So this is one thing that we find in the Vedic cosmology is that we're not alone in the universe. We're part of a whole cosmic hierarchy of beings, and we interact with them.
I just find it so fascinating that there is such a level, and I'm going to say, of forgetfulness. I mean, even when you talk about early Greek and Roman or Egyptian, that, there's all of this information in the Vedic tradition, and then you look at these other cultures, and even though they talk about some pretty old stuff, it's kind of like they dropped the ball. They lost the cliff notes to something that's so much deeper. I don't know, maybe we've lost the cliff notes to what's much deeper.
I think one thing that I always found fascinating about the Vedic cosmology or the Hindu cosmology is that the culture survived. There's Vedic culture alive today in India. You can go to temples in India where they're worshiping and doing things just as they were thousands and thousands of years ago. Whereas if you go to Egypt, to the pyramids and things like that, you're not going to find pharaohs there anymore. You're not going to find Egyptian priests, performing rituals to the Egyptian gods. If you go to the Parthenon, in Athens, you're not going to find Greek worshippers of Athena and Apollo and those things there. And, the same in Rome. It's all gone. But somehow or other, the spiritual tradition in India has survived over these many thousands of years. The culture is still, to some extent, pervaded by it, and they're still doing the same kinds of things that are described in the ancient writings, which is one reason I was so fascinated by the Vedic cosmology and why I was drawn to it and began practicing a system of yoga and meditation, and have gotten a lot of inspiration for my work from the Vedic teachings. Is that the culture that supported it in ancient times is still, to some extent, there today. Of course, that culture is having to struggle with all the influences of modernity and materialism, and the fact that India was ruled for some time by the European powers and things like that. But basically, a lot of the culture has survived intact, which is one reason why I was so fascinated by it.
Well, and it just seems like they have such a deep understanding of the subtle self, of the universe, of creation, of movement. Have such a deep understanding, and I guess this is, if the starting point is 5,000 years ago, we were living in caves, and walking around with our little clubs, and, we figured out that if you throw some seeds on the ground, they're going to grow, and then at the same time, like miraculously, at the same time, you have these deep spiritual traditions that kind of are right there. It doesn't make sense. I mean, that whole thing doesn't make sense.
And according to those, the Vedic histories, say you were mentioning, like according to the standard histories that are taught in school today, before about 10,000 or 12,000 years ago, everybody was a hunter-gatherer. There was no agriculture. There was no livestock. People were just scrounging around for whatever they could kill or dig out of the ground. And according to the standard accounts, the very first village life where people settled down, built houses, started cultivating crops, and domesticating animals was only about 12,000, 10,000 years ago. And then, according to the standard histories, the first urban civilizations began to arise about 6,000 or 7,000 years ago in the Nile Valley, the Euphrates Valley, the Indus Valley, the Yangtze River Valley in China. And that's the standard account that you get, which is, to me, totally inaccurate, because there's information in a lot of different wisdom sources, but in particular in the ancient Sanskrit writings of India, that there have been developed civilizations on Earth for millions and millions and millions of years. It's not something that just happened, 5,000 years ago. Of course, just as today we see that there are different levels of culture on Earth. There are many people living in modern cities with computers and cell phones and jet airplanes and all that stuff. But even today, there are some isolated parts of the world where, people are living in a more simple and natural way with very simple technology, some simple pottery, some simple technology, stone tools, flint knives, and things like that. So even today, there are different levels of culture among the human populations on Earth. So I think similarly in the past, it was also true. Yes, there may have been some people who were in the past who were living in a very, very simple way, but there were also more developed people. The ancient Sanskrit writings of India tell us that millions of years ago there were huge cities. I'm not going to say modern, because I think our modern cities are pretty trashy. There were beautiful urban centers with vast parks and flowering trees and beautiful buildings made of marble and things like that. Sometimes people try to create a little sense of this by building little amusement parks like Disney World or something. But there were vast cities like that where people once used to live, in addition to people living in a more simple, natural life. And they had, according to these accounts, they had airships and spaceships. They were called vimanas in the Sanskrit language. They had robots that did different things, just like we're starting to have little robot rug cleaners and things like that. I've read some Sanskrit texts that tell of different sorts of robots that were used by ancient people. They used vimanas or spacecraft. They were able to tell time by measuring the movements of atoms and things like that. These things are all described in the Puranas, these ancient Sanskrit writings. So I think it's not true that 5,000 or 10,000 years ago everybody was just living in caves and existing by hunting or gathering, or just by the most simple and primitive, crude types of agriculture.
I'm going to totally change topic here, so I hope you're okay with that.
Sure.
One of the things that I have come upon recently is the concept that in most cultures around the world there's an association with snakes or serpents or monsters or some kind of creatures from the underworld or under the water, but there's always this under association. And in the Hindu cosmology, they talk about the Nagas who live in the earth. And what's going on with these, and I'm going to call them snake people, because someplace I was reading they were talking about, there was snake worship, but I don't know, that just seemed too shallow for me. That there were snakes around, so we're going to worship the snake. Any insights on that?
According to the Vedic cosmology, we live in a multi-level universe. Basically, there are 14 different levels of the material universe. At the top levels are the planets of the demigods and sages. And these are very subtle realms of very subtle energies. And so they're inhabited by, as I said, the demigods, different categories of liberated sages and things like that. And then the middle levels, around the 7th level, that's where we exist now. And then below us, there are lower levels of the cosmos. You can call them subterranean levels. And they're inhabited by various types of beings. It's not necessarily that they're, within the earth in the way that, we might think of what we mean by subterranean. But what it means is a lower level of the cosmos. And in one of those lower levels is the home of a type of being called a Naga. And they are described and depicted in the ancient Sanskrit writings and in temple art and things like that as having the form of serpents. But not exactly like that, because sometimes they're depicted half human, half serpent, or in the literature they're described in such a way that they can speak, they have a whole culture, they have a whole society, with rulers and citizens and towns and cities. So it's not as if they're the ordinary type of snake or serpent that you're going to find in crawling around on the ground somewhere. They're a mystical type of being with what we would call mystic powers, and that those powers sometimes included the ability to change forms. So there is a vast literature on the Nagas in the Puranas and in other Vedic texts, but it would be wrong to identify them with, although they're described as being serpent-like in form or having the form of serpents. They're not, say, like an ordinary snake that we would just see on our level of reality.
Well, and it also sounds like they're living in another dimensional space, different vibrational frequency, and not like, if you go into that cave, you're going to meet these like snake people hanging out.
No, it's more like it's a different level of the cosmos. Like I said, not like if you dig a hole in the ground, you're going to find the world of the Nagas. It's a little bit different, more like you would say either a different dimensional space or a different level of the cosmos, something like that. Now, that doesn't mean that they cannot sometimes appear on our level of reality. This is a feature of the Vedic cosmology that some beings can travel through these different levels. Some beings are confined to the level that they exist on, like us. We human beings, we're confined to the level of reality that we exist on unless we take up some system of yoga or meditation by which we get the ability to elevate ourselves off this level of reality, which is what we should be trying to do, really. We should be taking up some process of consciousness elevation that will restore our conscious selves to the real level of reality where we belong. But aside from that, we're kind of confined to this level of reality, this level of sense perception. It's like a little virtual reality system. The Vedic universe is something like computer games that some people play. Like if you kill all the demons on one level, then you go up to the next level, and then you encounter other things. And then if you do everything right there, then you go to some other level. And unless you do, you're stuck on that level. So that's more or less what the Vedic universe is like. It's a universe of different levels or different dimensions stacked one on top of the other. And to get from one level to the next, you have to transform your consciousness or your vibrational frequency, if you want to put it in those terms, or your energetic state.
But that makes sense where if we are, I'm going to look at my paper, what I said before, if we're more stupid and greedy and egotistical, our energy would get denser, and we would ultimately, quote unquote, excuse my French, go to hell, which is where the snake people are, in that denser level of vibration, or at least that's where they're purported.
Well, it's a very complex system. I was mentioning terms like lower and higher, but if you study the Puranas, you'll see that there's some Sanskrit terms, like the planets or levels of the demigods are called Svarga, and the level that we humans live on is called Bauma. Then one of the subterranean levels is called Bauma Svarga. It means the subterranean heavenly planets. So it's actually described that the Nagas, they live on a level of reality which is, just in terms of geography, it's below the level of our reality, but it's very highly developed in terms of the material facilities. It's very heavenly in that sense. Just like you can go to Las Vegas and it's in the desert. It's like a terrible place, but when you see Las Vegas lit up at night with all the lights and the fountains going and everything, it can appear quite opulent. Even though it's just a terrible place in the middle of a burning desert. So this Balma Svarga is something like that, although it is on a level lower than the terrestrial level that we exist on. It's a fascinating place in terms of its facilities. It said that it's in that sense it's just like a heavenly planet.
It just makes me laugh. The Las Vegas connection. It's like, Sin City, where you're surely going to hell. No, I get it, Michael. We'll be back with Michael Cremo after these words from our sponsors.
Just Energy Radio with your host, Dr. Rita Louise, will return right after these messages.
Is your body performing at its peak level? Are you experiencing physical pain or having trouble sleeping? Ciara holographic chips can help you to restore balance to your body and provide you with the relief you've been looking for. The Ciara chip works similar to an acupuncture treatment. It communicates directly with the body through our human electromagnetic field. These transparent chips are non-transdermal and contain no drugs or other harmful substances. Our chips can be used to support pain relief, sleep enhancement, and increased energy. Ciara chips are also available to help you deal with sinus allergies as well as the harmful effects of EMF radiation. For more information about this remarkable new scientific breakthrough in health technology, visit productsforthesoul.com. Take a journey to the dark side of the spirit world and meet the bad kids on the block in Dark Angels, an insider's guide to ghosts, spirits, and attached entities. Who are these bad kids? As a child, you might have met one at night, under your bed, in your closet, or down a dark hallway. Dark Angels is an adult dissertation about ghosts. It's filled with revealing information about how these dark forces can influence our lives. Order your copy of Dark Angels today. Visit www.darkangelsbook.com for more information.
And now back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
And welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm Dr. Rita Louise, and we're talking to Michael Cremo. His website is mcremo.com, and his new book is The Forbidden Archaeologist. Michael, a little earlier in the show, you mentioned the cycles of times and the Yugas and 2012, and I did want to talk about that with you in particular because I think the whole 2012 phenomena is interesting, and where I'm hoping you would go is do a little brief overview of the different cycles and where we are in the different cycles, and then we can revisit because I have some questions about what you think is actually going to happen in December, or is there anything in the literature that shows that at this point in time there might be something that we could potentially experience in the 2012 thing?
Yeah, and to get back to the basic Vedic time concept, it's cyclical. It involves the idea that there are vast cycles of time that repeat again and again and again. And actually, the Vedic time cycles are a little complex. There are cycles within cycles within cycles. But the basic unit of the Vedic cyclical time is called the Kalpa, or the day of Brahma. Brahma being that chief engineering demigod who manifests the material universes and the material bodies in them. He has a day that lasts for 4,320,000,000 years. And then it's followed by a night of Brahma that lasts another 4,320,000,000 years. And then there's another day of Brahma, and then another night of Brahma. So it goes on and on like that in endless cycles. And during the days of Brahma, life, including human life, is manifest in the cosmos. And during the nights of Brahma, life, including human life, is dormant. Everything is like in a sleeping or dreaming state. Then this basic, in the current cycle, the current day of Brahma, we're about halfway through it according to the Vedic cosmological calendar. It began about 2 billion years ago and will go on for another 2 billion years. So we're right about in the middle of a day of Brahma, or a kalpa as it's sometimes called. And then after that, there'll be a devastation. After 2 billion years, there'll be a devastation, and there'll be a night of Brahma, and everything will be in a dormant state for 4 billion years, and then another day of Brahma will come. Now, the kalpa, or the day of Brahma, is divided into sub-cycles called manvantar periods, and each one lasts about 300 million years. And we're now in the 7th manvantar period in the current day of Brahma, according to the Vedic cosmological calendar. And that means there have been 6 manvantars ahead of us, before us, in this kalpa, or day of Brahma. And in the Vedic literature, it says that between each manvantar period, there's a mini devastation. Not as big a devastation as there is at the end of a whole day of Brahma, but at the end of each one of these 14 manvantar periods, there's a mini devastation. And as I said, we're now in the 7th manvantar period in this day of Brahma. That means there have been 6 before us. And it's interesting that modern paleontology tells us that in the history of life on Earth, which goes back about 2 to 3 billion years, according to modern science, there have been 6 major extinction events. So I think there's an interesting parallel there, that according to the Vedic literature, the ancient Sanskrit writings, the day of Brahma began about 2 billion years ago, and that's when life would begin to become manifest in the cosmos. And according to modern science, about 2 or 3 billion years ago is when life starts on Earth. And according to the Vedic calendar, there have been 6 major devastations after each of the 6 manvantar periods that have preceded us. And according to modern paleontology, there have been 6 major extinction events in the history of life on Earth. So as I said, we're now in the middle of a day of Brahma. We're in the 7th manvantar period. And a manvantar period itself is, well, first I'll say, the current manvantar period began about 120 million years ago. And it's going to end in about 180 million years. And then there will be a devastation, a cosmic devastation. So it's a little ways ahead of us, 180 million years for a manvantar devastation. But a manvantar period is made up of 71 divya yugas. That's another cycle. So we've got cycles within cycles within cycles. So that a divya yuga is made up of 4 ages, or yugas. The first is a golden age. The second, things get about 25% more materialistic. In the third age, things become about 50% more materialistic. then finally in the fourth age, the Kali Yuga, things start getting really bad in terms of the environment and society. There's a lot of degradation of the environment and of society. So there are 71 cycles of 4 yugas in the Manvantara period. We are now in the Kali Yuga of the 28th yuga cycle of this current Manvantara period. And I know this is a little hard to keep in your head, for those of you who are listening. But as I said, there's cycles within cycles within cycles. So we're in, the Kali Yuga is an age of environmental and social degradation, and we can kind of see that going on. The descriptions that are there in the ancient Sanskrit writings of what a Kali Yuga is like is pretty much what we're experiencing. Now, this Kali Yuga that we're in began about 5,000 years ago, and it's going to last another 427,000 years, after which there'll be a kind of devastation. Then there'll be a new golden age, and another Satya Yuga, which is the first yuga in the cycle. Just like in a year, you've got spring, summer, winter, fall. Spring, summer, fall, winter, then another spring. And then it's the same with the yugas. There's a Satya Yuga, a Treta Yuga, a Dwapara Yuga, a Kali Yuga. And then after the Kali Yuga is finished, there's another Satya Yuga, or Age of Truth, Age of Spirituality, and the cycle goes on again. So as I said, we're now about 5,000 years into the Kali Yuga of the 28th Yuga cycle of the 7th Manvantara period of the current Kalpa, or day of Brahma. So that's where we are in terms of the time. Now, because it's a Kali Yuga, there can always be some relatively minor environmental or social disturbance. That's a feature of the Kali Yuga, and it's going to get worse as time goes on. But it's not going to be the end of the universe or the end of life on Earth or anything like that, according to the Vedic cosmological calendar. So as far as 2012 is concerned, that's based on the Mayan calendar, which also has a cyclical concept of time. And there are different interpretations that different researchers and experts give about 2012 and what it means in terms of the Mayan calendar. Some people think it means a big, huge cosmic devastation of the kind that was seen in the film 2012. I don't think anything like that is going to happen, not according to the Vedic cosmological calendar. That will happen later, millions and millions of years from now. It will happen eventually, but not in 2012. But because it is the Kali Yuga, there always can be some disturbance here, and we do see a lot of environmental disturbances these days. Tsunamis, earthquakes, huge floods. Like the recent flooding in Australia, or the volcanic eruptions in Indonesia, or the tsunamis that hit the world a few years ago, or there is a lot of environmental disturbance going on, and gradually it's going to become worse. It's not going to be the end of the world, but there is going to be environmental disturbance. There is going to be social disturbance. But some people think that 2012 being the end of one of the cycles in the Mayan calendar, they think will also be a time of enlightenment, the beginning of a new cycle. I think that's also true. There's always a chance for enlightenment, even in the Kali Yuga. That opportunity is there, if we want to take it. So what I think is going to happen in 2012 is, it's not going to be the end of the world. It's not going to be the total illumination in the world, but because it's the Kali Yuga, there's the chance for increasing environmental and social disturbance. but there's also a chance for people to become more enlightened if that's what they really want to do.
I just think it's interesting that we're only 5,000 years into the whole thing. You know, we came out of the caves, boom, we're in this cycle, but we have 400,000 plus more to go. And there's part of me that says, okay, but it's a cycle, so, the pendulum will swing all the way to one end, and we might, during that cycle start swinging back to the other side and getting ourselves lined up for going into the next golden age.
That opportunity is there, but the trend is going to be, for the next 400,000 years, is going to be increasing environmental disturbances, increasing social disturbances, a gradual decrease in the level of health in human populations. There's going to be more extinctions of plants and animals. The lifespan is actually going to decrease. And according to the Vedic cosmology, in the first age in the Yuga cycle, the Satya Yuga, people live for about 100,000 years, and they're in perfect health. Everyone is at a very high level of energy in terms of its frequency. They're very spiritual. They're living very simply and very naturally. They are not divided into different social classes. They're not living in cities or anything like that. Everyone is just living very peacefully and harmoniously in a natural paradisical state. With the second age, the Treta Yuga, things get a little bit more materialistic. People live for 10,000 years instead of 100,000. And they start dividing themselves up into different social classes where you get some people are the rulers, some people are the ruled, and like that. And then they start the first village life and urban life. Then in the next stage, the third age, the lifespan goes down to 1,000 years, and everything is... There's a lot of emphasis on material development, but there's still a lot of goodness. But then in the next stage, in the Kali Yuga, the lifespan, the one that we're in now, the lifespan drops to 100 years in the beginning of the Kali Yuga, and then gradually it will decrease down to around 30 or 40 years at the end of the Kali Yuga. And human society will become more and more degraded as time goes on, and the environmental disturbances will decrease. But just because that's the general trend doesn't mean you yourself have to be part of the general trend. Just because winter's coming on doesn't mean you have to freeze to death. You can make preparations and you can keep yourself and others warm, but you can't change the weather. You just have to adjust to the situation. So similarly, in the age of Kali, things are going to progressively get worse, but that doesn't mean we have to be part of that. We can create, by transforming our energies individually and collectively, we can have our own little golden age within the Kali Yuga if we want. That's possible. But the trend is for increasing disturbance and degradation in the environment and society.
Well, and it doesn't sound like, the end of this cycle, and I'm making a joke here, is going to be next year. And so, because there are so many people that are worried about it, and
they should be worried. And
but about the world blowing up, or that kind of thing.
Well, not in 2000. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen in 2012.
Anyway, Michael. Well, if you ask me to, hey, we agree. We need to wrap up the show a little early today. your new book, The Forbidden Archaeologist. When did that come out? Because I know it's like brand new.
That came out this year, a couple months ago. It came out actually at the end of 2009, in November 2000. 2010. We're now in 2011. I'm getting the years mixed up. So we're now in 2011. So it came out in November of 2010, and it's made up of columns that I write for Atlantis Rising magazine. I have a column called The Forbidden Archaeologist, and in it, I write about new discoveries that come to my attention. I write about my experiences in presenting this forbidden archaeology topic to scientists and other audiences around the world. I talk about research, ongoing research that I'm doing. So each chapter is just one of the columns. There are 49 columns that I've written for Atlantis Rising magazine. So each chapter in the book is like a little bite-sized introduction to various aspects of what it is that I do and why I'm called the Forbidden Archaeologist. So it's a good introduction to my work for those who haven't really encountered it yet. So that's that
Great.
book.
Michael, thank you for coming on the show and allowing me to pick your brain and share your plethora of information with the listeners today.
Well, it's an honor and a pleasure, Dr. Rita.
I just love having you on because I can throw these really hard questions at you and you just oh, I know that.
Yeah, I didn't have to say
go.
I don't know, which I often have to do sometimes. So I was able to give some kind of answer to all your questions. So I did pretty well.
No, I think you did excellent. Like I said, I was kind of, left field.
But I'm not afraid
there
to say I don't know. If I really don't know something, I'm not afraid to. I won't make up something just to give an answer. Yeah.
Okay. Michael,